And now from politics, we get into a different conversation. And as I had mentioned earlier, right now our topic of conversation is on inclusion. And specifically, we are talking about disability inclusion in Kenya. And I am joined by 3 guests who will be speaking to us about this topic. I will start by introducing them from the very far end. That is Mr. Richard Bosire. Mr. Richard Bosire is the Deputy Director, Directorate of Social Development. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And then next to him, we have Madam Fatma Wangare Haji. She is the Executive Director, Kenya Association of Intellectually Handicapped. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And then right next to her, we have Mr. Alex Munyere. Mr. Alex Munyere is the Chief Disability Service Officer, National Council of Persons with Disability. Welcome.
Good morning, viewers.
Thank you so much for coming. I may just allow you to tell us a bit about the corporation or the association that you work for. You can just begin with you, Mr. Alex. What is the National Council of Persons with Disability all about?
Thank you very much. National Council for Persons with Disabilities is a state agency that was created by Disability Act 2003 and mandated to advise the government on all matters pertaining to persons with disabilities in the country. As I said, we are created by an act of parliament, and we have our Chief Executive Officer, who is Mr. Harun Hassan, and our board, board of management, board of directors, yes, and the secretariat. I'm part of the secretariat, but at one point during the National Council's formative stage, I was a board of director, and I tuned in to become a secretariat. So basically, we have all issues of disabilities, ranging from registration, and the biggest issue that we do is cash transfer for persons with disabilities. We also do tax exemption. We also do economic empowerment. We have a robust education program. We have several programs that are geared towards improving the lives of persons with disabilities in the country.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, now we get to understand where you're coming from. And now to you, Madam Fatma, if you can tell us a bit about the Kenya Association of the Intellectually Handicapped.
Okay. So the Kenya Association of the Intellectually Handicapped is an organization of persons with disabilities, registered organization with the NGO Coordination Board. It is an organization that advocates for the rights of people with intellectual disabilities and their families in 15 countries. Started way back in 1996, and the reason for forming Kenya Association of the Intellectually Handicapped, and up to date, intellectual disability is one of the marginalized disabilities across the globe. And so the founders then thought it was very, very important to form this organization to advocate for the full inclusion, participation of people with intellectual disabilities and their families in all aspects of life, starting from education, health, social, employment, you name it. Because when we talk about people with intellectual disabilities, they tend to be excluded in all areas of life, and therefore this is why the organization exists. I'm a mother. I have a daughter with an intellectual disability, and I joined the organization 18 years back. Yeah.
All right. Okay. And to you, sir, tell us more about where you are coming from.
Okay, as I said, I'm Richard Bosire from the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, State Department for Social Protection and Senior Citizens Affairs, specifically the Directorate of Social Development. In the Directorate of Social Development, there are several programs that we deal with. One of them is family promotion and social welfare. Another one is community capacity, as well as disability programs and rehabilitative services. where I belong. So in the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, our Cabinet Secretary is Dr. Alfred Mutua, and our PS is Mr. Joseph Motari. That is where we are coming from. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's get straight into it. You know, when you talk about inclusion of persons living with disability at the moment, would you say we are at a good place in you know, as a country? Have we gotten to a point where inclusion is really a thing when it comes to persons living with disability? Just a general overview.
Yes and no. As I said, during our formative stage, when the National Council for Persons with Disabilities was coming up, we had a lot of exclusion, because the opposite of inclusion is exclusion. Persons with disabilities were not involved in any way in the development agenda of this country. And we found ourselves clamoring for space. And we were, by that time, by the way, I was part of Fatma. I and Fatma, we were going to the streets, we were demonstrating, we were even throwing wheelchairs all over and telling the government to give us our space. But with the time, the government has continued to open up and to give persons with disabilities a hearing. And we found even the president himself, the former president Kibaki, signing the Disability Act, and God made it such that he signed that act while himself was on a wheelchair. So somehow, slowly, the country started opening up for persons with disabilities. But I said yes and no, because even at this moment, we still have a lot of gaps. We still have a lot of issues we are handling regarding inclusion for persons with disabilities. And people can attest to it, that even the government saying, for example, all appointive positions, persons with disabilities should be set aside, space, some appointed position. Right now, we see government institutions, even private companies, hiring their people without regard to persons with disabilities. And we find even opportunities being lost for persons with disabilities. We even have counties that have members of county assemblies that are nominated on the platform of disability, yet they are not persons with disabilities. So we still have issues, but we are somewhere.
Yeah, you're at least somewhere. All right, maybe to you, Madam Fatma, you know, being that you come from an association that fights for the representation of the intellectually handicapped, when we talk about education, how inclusive is education in this country in the sense of inclusion of persons living with disability, and maybe to be specific, the intellectually handicapped? How is that situation?
We are not yet there. And I'm saying this because when you talk about inclusive education and removing barriers so that learners with and without disabilities enjoy the same education privileges on an equal basis, then the situation is still wanting. So when we talk about people probably with physical disabilities, people who are blind or visual impairments, then slowly we can say we are getting there into inclusion. But when we go now down to disabilities that are not well understood, like intellectual disability or autism or cerebral palsy, then we see a lot of challenges first, even in the access of education itself. So when the environment is not accessible, and I'm not just talking about the physical accessibility, I'm talking about information accessibility and communication accessibility, and also the change of attitude that a learner with an intellectual disability can learn in the same environment as, you know, as their peer without a disability, then we are not yet there. I know we have pockets of good practices where the government is trying to put in some work to ensure that all learners with and without disabilities enjoy, you know, the same opportunities in education. But deeply rooted, when you look at it, we start with exclusion right from the admission to schools. Like, I have so many stories where parents have come to say, I tried to enroll my son or daughter in the nearby schools, but they were denied on the basis of disability. Not because of the learning outcomes that they cannot learn, but because of their disability, because the disability is seen to be so complex that people don't have the know-hows on how to include probably a learner with an intellectual disability in the classroom or in the school. So just 2 weeks ago, we had a case, and I'm sure you heard about it, of a girl who has Down syndrome in Bungoma, who went to a high school for 4 years, but she was not registered for examination. This is quite sad, and this is just one case. And why wasn't she registered? There's still this myth that people with intellectual disabilities are going to lower the mean score of the school.
That's unfortunate.
It is quite unfortunate. So we still see a lot of exclusion. Schools are not prepared to welcome learners with intellectual disability. The curriculum hasn't been modified. Teachers haven't been trained. We don't just have, you know, general classroom or schools supports and accommodations that include people with intellectual disabilities. This is not to say that other learners with disabilities also benefit from inclusive education. When you look at deaf learners, they also face a lot of challenges in accessing education. And therefore, as a country, we need to remove the barriers so that all learners with and without disabilities can access education on an equal basis. Just to finish, my daughter has an intellectual disability. She went to 2-3 schools here in Nairobi for 20 good years. She came back home, not because she was graduated on the learning outcomes or transition into maybe employment and all that. She graduated back home because the school said she has to create space for the younger children with intellectual disability. So she came back home with no certification, nothing to show that she has been in school. And yeah, so we have to start from square A. But again, what I'm saying, the government is really trying. We have a directorate of, you know, special education within the Ministry of Education. They're really putting in a lot of effort to ensure that learners with disabilities, you know, access education on an equal basis, but we have a long way to go.
A lot still needs to be done,
Yes.
clearly, you know, just from your testament alone. I mean, a lot still needs to be done. Now, maybe for you, sir, you know, that's a gap she's mentioned. Maybe what other gaps have you seen that are there, you know, for persons living with disability, and how should we go about addressing these gaps?
Oh, thank you for this opportunity again. The government is doing a lot, as they have said, from the past. Nothing much had been done, but moving forward, the government is doing a lot, especially on policies and legislation. We have the Persons with Disability Act, which was 2003, which is under review. It has gone through the first reading of the National Assembly. It's a 2003 act.
Yeah.
So to put it in line with the Constitution of Kenya 2010, as well as the Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disability. That's why it's under review. And I think at this time, it will address most of the issues and the gaps which exist in the disability space. As well as we have the National Policy for Persons with Disability, which has been under review for the last more than 15 years. But courtesy of our leaders, especially the CS and our peers, we have completed the national policy for persons with disability. And in fact, last week, we submitted the policy to the CS so that he can forward it to the cabinet for approval. So Kenya has done so much, especially again in ratification of the Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disability. It was ratified in 2008. And that one shows commitment by government towards the disability area, especially the UN Convention for the Rights of Persons with Disability addresses issues on non-discrimination, participation and inclusion, accessibility, equality of opportunity, and all those areas are covered by the UN Convention. And once a country ratifies a convention, it becomes part of our laws. So it's our law in Kenya here. And many other laws which have been enacted by the country, showing that the country, and especially the department and the ministry, is keen on disability issues. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. To you, sir, maybe have we made an effort as a country? Have we made an effort as a country to ensure that public spaces are at least easily accessible, or the accessibility of public spaces for persons living with disability, for example, people who are using wheelchairs and so on? Have we made an effort in that, in ensuring, you know, just the public spaces are accessible for them?
Yes. There is a lot being done under the table. Maybe the results are not yet seen, but what we've done, like what our director has said, we are reviewing the Disability Act right now, and we thank the ministry because they are the ones pushing through Parliament for the enactment of the new Disability Act, which will give us a bit of a muscle, because the former act just talked about audit, disability audit, accessibility audit. The council is mandated to audit institutions, like for example KBC. We see whether you are accessible for persons with disabilities, but did not give us the relevant teeth to bite if you do not conform to the accessibility audit that we are undertaking. So right now we want to believe that we are being empowered to be able to assure Kenyans of accessibility. Number two, we have a department of mainstreaming, mainstreaming department that is even talking without even using the force. We are using dialogue to talk to institutions and companies and constructors. We are telling them how to modernize their buildings and make it accessible for persons with disabilities. Our main impediment in the whole scenario of inclusion, and as our director Fatma was talking about, our main problem is resources. We have very little resources from the government, but we want to thank the government and the other well-wishers who are coming to support us. Resources are little. We imagine we are given just an average of 250 million for our activities, which is equivalent to what 2 constituencies in the country receive. And we are expected to do activities that are national-wide. We are expected to, do education, assistive device, provide sunscreen lotion and all that to the whole country. Yet our budget is very little. Other than a cash transfer, we are very much constrained. So as much as we would want to put structures to be able to assure Kenyans of their accessibility, we are somehow limited by the resources that we have. So we want to thank well-wishers like KAI and all the other institutions that have come up, even in international donors that have come up, like USAID and all that. They have come up to support what we are doing because they believe that we are in the right course and we are doing the right thing. However, my still parting shot would be that the mandate, the buck falls with the what do they say? The buck stops with the government. We must provide resources to persons with disabilities for them to enjoy the accessibility Fatma was talking about. It's unfortunate, just a minute. That case of Bungoma is one that was reported. We have a myriad of cases that they go without being reported. And one, parents may not have capacity to highlight the issues of their parents, of their children, like what we saw in Bungoma. Even Fatma herself, you know, she's a testament that her daughter was just sent without any certificate. So, and in the whole country, we are suffering. People with disabilities are suffering. I don't want to say they are being excluded, but we are trying to ensure this inclusion as a council. We are trying to ensure this inclusion, and we want to call all of us in the country to support us, so that when we come to handle issues like that case of Bungoma, if we need to take maybe authorities to account for the action, then the council, we must be supported to do that, because we feel that we are there as the voice of the persons with disabilities in the country. Yes.
For sure. Could you be having data on persons living with disability at the moment?
Yes, yes. In terms of the registered, we have the Kenya Bureau, KNBL census that was conducted in 2019. Yes, 2019. That placed persons with disabilities to be only 2.2% of the whole population of the country. And we challenged that data because by that time, when the KNBS was doing that census, we were about 45 million Kenyans, close to 50. So if you count 10% of, say, 50 million is 5 million. Yet the census talked about 2.3%. 2.2.
990.
Yes, 2.2. So if a developing country like Kenya could have 2.2% of persons living with disabilities, yet we know Kenya, we are developing. A developed country like US or whatever, the population, the parameter is 10% of any population must be persons with disabilities. And you know, disability and poverty, ni mama na brother and sisters. Yes. So you would expect in a developing country like Kenya, the percentage to be higher.
Much higher.
Much higher. But you know what happened? During the census, I was part of it because I was censored. Did you say that? Somebody is censored. I was counted. Now, during the counting, those clerks, and sorry to say this, they were overwhelmed. They were given so many households to visit too. So at one point, akiingia tu kwa household, akikuta Fatma akikaa chini, ana conclude ya kwamba ana tick tu.
In fact, that's what they did.
Hana disability.
And they kept on telling them, my daughter has a disability. You need to count her. And they said, we cannot see her disability.
We cannot see her disability.
That's another challenge.
And you know, they were overwhelmed by the many households they were given. I don't know, the planners didn't plan well to give the capacity, the clerks, the capacity to be able to count people with disabilities in the country. I'm sure if we had a recount, we would go to a population of 6, close to 10 million.
Okay. I totally agree with that, because if you look at WHO, statistics now say 16% of any population consists of people with disabilities.
Okay.
Yeah, so in Kenya we are saying 2.2%. What does that mean? If you are not counted, you don't count. And that's why the National Council for Persons with Disabilities is not well resourced. Because if the exchequer go with the 2.2%, what does that mean? It also affects service delivery of so many Kenyans with disabilities in the communities. Yeah.
All right. So when we talk about persons with disability, unfortunately, we cannot fail to talk about discrimination as well.
Definitely.
Because it's unfortunate, but we just call a spade a spade. So probably what should be done in order to do away with the discrimination from where you sit?
Okay, so first, just to echo what Director Richard Bosire, that Kenya is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and one of the principles is non-discrimination. And then in our constitution, it is well stipulated that a person cannot be discriminated on the basis of disability. However, discrimination is not explicitly prohibited in our services, in our laws. We still have laws that are quite derogatory, that refer to people with disabilities as imbeciles, idiots, which is quite bad. We still have services that are quite discriminatory. So like the case we talked about, the Bungoma, the school. And that's just one. We have so many other cases, access to, health, access to employment. We see a lot of discrimination across the board. So one thing what we are saying, like constant awareness creation needs to be done. And again, the buck stops with the state. It is a state obligation. But that is not to say that organizations of persons with disabilities like mine should not do, awareness creation. But again, I'm so happy with the current situation in the country, because as organizations of persons with disabilities, we work very closely with the National Council for Persons with Disabilities and also the Directorate. So we have like an interagency coordination committee which brings all stakeholders together. And therefore, more resources need to be put in place to address disability discrimination, but also go further to say, if you discriminate a person on the basis of disability, the way the Constitution says, then you have to face the law. Yeah, I think the problem that we have is that we have so many cases. Some of them are just spoken in homes and they're not taken anywhere. So we want to see, mechanisms and structures to ensure that whoever perpetuates discrimination to a person with a disability then faces the law. I know we have the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, but then again, it means it has to be well resourced for it to carry out its mandate, together with the National Gender and Equality Commission. Yeah.
All right, so we keep hearing that the buck stops with the states, and that is the truth, So probably when you talk about resources, and ensuring that persons living with disability are well looked after, matters resources. Maybe what is the government doing about that? Is that something you're looking into?
Yeah, the government is trying very much. We know that resources are scarce all over, but the government is trying very much to put resources to the disability area. Especially on discrimination, as my fellow have talked about. The government is working on a reduction of stigma and discrimination. In fact, the department has developed a disability awareness creation booklet that is used for awareness creation. We have officers in all sub-counties in Kenya. All counties in Kenya. We have officers in all regions in Kenya, the former provinces. So they work with the organizations of persons with disability to carry out awareness and to reduce stigma and discrimination. Fatma has talked about the case in Bungoma. One of the ways to reduce discrimination is awareness creation during the International Day for Persons with Disability, which is usually celebrated on 3rd of December of every year. Fortunately enough, this year we shall be celebrating the day in Bungoma County, where we shall have, that is on 3rd of December. We have identified so many guests, including the governors, the CS, the PS, all of them will be there. Members of the public, organizations of persons with disability, all of them will be there. So that is part of the way in which we can sensitize the public on the issues and the rights of persons with disabilities. So we are working. In fact, on 2nd, we shall even be having a town hall discussion in KBC University, where we shall be having speakers, lecturers, students, members of the public, organizations of persons with disability, where we shall be having panel discussion on what the government has done in terms of disability inclusion, the gaps which are there, especially in Bungoma County, in the whole of the country. So it will be a very big celebration, and we shall be even having exhibitions, tree planting. All those activities will be done on 2nd and 3rd of December this year. All those are geared towards reduction of discrimination and awareness creation of the rights and services offered by the government towards persons with disabilities. Yeah.
All right, as we come to a conclusion, you are celebrating the 20th anniversary of disability inclusion in Kenya. Kindly, as we wind up, just tell us a bit about the celebrations and what is expected.
Okay, thank you. This National Council fraternity sat down and we thought that it is 20 years since the government opened its doors for persons with disabilities. And we also want to celebrate the fact that the government recognized that issues of persons with disabilities are issues of the government. And it is a coincidence that it is also the creation of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities. But most importantly, we want to organize for dialogue, discussions like what we are having here. Let the whole country talk disability. We have organized in 27th and 28th of this month, we have organized a national forum where we will converge and discuss about disability. What is happening the whole country, all the 47 counties are going to organize for dialogues, discussions and dialogues on disability before the 27th and 28th national dialogue, so that we will culminate into one meeting that will do an audit of where we are, where we are coming from, where we are, and what we need to do so that for us to move forward to assure Kenyans of our disability inclusion.
Okay.
So generally that is what is happening in the whole country. Like yesterday we were in Nyandarua. We had a huge meeting where persons with disabilities were assessed, and we are taking services closer to people, registration, assessment, cancer screening for persons with albinism, and all the activities that we are doing in the Mashinani.
Okay.
It is happening all over the country. And
all
what
right.
Director Bosire is saying is part of it. Even in that 3rd of December, Disability Day, will be part of it. And the discussion continues. Even after 3rd of December, after 27th and 28th National Forum, then the discussion will continue. And we want
Okay.
to ask everybody
To join in
discuss disability in the whole country.
All right, thank you so much. I want to appreciate the two gentlemen and the lady for joining us for this conversation and for speaking about it. And as he said, we need to speak more about it so that we get word out there, so that we also get to manage to do away with the discrimination. This is where we get to end this conversation. Thank you so much to Madam Fatma, Mr. Alex, and Mr. Richard for joining us. Do not go too far. Good Morning Kenya continues. Mike Megwe is coming right up after this.